On his heraldic crest is a falcon.
Ooh.
Caw!
Yeah.
Falcon.
Like it. Hey, welcome to the Tabletop Travel Guide, the podcast where we explore fictional worlds and civilizations right from the comfort of our own table.
Hello.
I'm Tyler. I've been playing TTRPGs for over 10 years, and I'm currently in 3 different Pathfinder campaigns.
3?
Yeah, well, I'm running or playing in 2 and then running a 3rd.
Okay, yeah. I'm Ryan. I've also been playing TTRPGs for about 10 years. I'm GMing a Pathfinder 2, and I'm playing in a Starfinder campaign. And then I was literally talking to one of our friends over a Discord call about maybe playing in a 3rd. So, it's a problem.
Yeah. Eventually, I feel like we're just going to continue to increase. By episode 12, we'll be like, we have 5 campaigns and 7
I'm
campaigns.
in 18 different campaigns.
Yeah, maybe. So, Ryan, I have good news.
Good news. Go on.
We don't have to have our favorite segment of what things we mispronounced last episode. Yeah,
wonderful.
We actually pronounced everything correctly, I think. I'm pretty sure. Probably.
Hopefully.
If we're wrong, feel free to email us at tabletoptravelguidepodcast@gmail.com. But other than that, I think we can skip that section.
Awesome.
Yeah. Last episode, we talked about the revolution, bloody mess that was Galt.
Yes, the wonderful nitty-gritty of perpetual revolution.
And so today, I think we are going to be kind of talking about the kind of mirror of Galt?
Yeah, the mirror's a good way to put it. Like, what would have happened if Galt didn't go so poorly?
Yeah.
That is the nation of Andoran.
Okay, Andoran.
People of Andoran are Andoran.
Okay.
I can almost guarantee I will mess that up at some point. But yeah, the people of Andoran, they're an interesting folk.
And so where is Andoran in relation to Galt?
In relation to Galt, it is southwest,
okay,
or it is directly west of Taldor.
Okay.
So we're kind of slowly making our way along like the coast of the Inner Sea.
Okay,
so borders the Inner Sea.
It's on the coast. You get some good coastal towns on
there. Yes. There are specifically 2 major coastal towns, but we'll get there. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So we will jump all the way back to our previous, a couple episodes ago now, Taldor.
Okay.
Everything kind of comes back to Taldor.
Everything comes back to Taldor.
Do you remember the 4th Army of Exploration we talked about?
Yes. 4th out of 7? 8?
6.5. 6.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So jumping back to there, they were going west, right? And they explored what would eventually become Andoran.
Okay.
And when they got there, I feel like I made it maybe sound a bit like they were just exploring empty grasslands. Yeah. There are people in all those places.
Oh, yeah.
So they're exploring the area, and they find all these. It's very sparsely populated with like farming villages, quaint little hamlets, and the Taldan people going through there and the soldiers. They don't really actually conquer. They just kind of like slowly integrate with the local populace.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the less bloody explorations, just kind of hanging out.
Yeah. They just kind of like look around and they go, it's kind of nice here. I think once I'm done exploring, I might come back and settle down and start a family.
Okay.
Get a little plot of land.
Good place to retire.
Yeah, exactly. And what they find quickly as the population starts to jump up a little bit is there's some great resources in Andoran. Some great natural resources.
Perfect.
And so kind of the first thing on our docket is 1707 AR.
Okay.
And that is when Andoran formally becomes a province of Taldor.
Okay.
So administratively, we are now official. It is called Andoran.
And you said 1707, so that's like 3,000 years ago.
Yes.
Andoran becomes a province of Taldor.
Yes. Okay. It's officially a province. They're on the books. It's legit. So, of course, everything's great, right? Everything's wonderful. They put this guy called General Callistus. And that is one where I'm definitely going to mispronounce.
General Callistus.
Callistus.
Cool. He's
put in charge of the province. He's Governor Callistus right now. And he immediately does the most Taldan thing possible.
Okay.
He decides to go exploring in his own province.
I mean...
Immediately.
Okay. Well, okay. So is it Taldan exploration or just like, I'm curious about my own people?
It's not... enormously well, it is kind of enormously disruptive. So there's this forest called Arthfell Forest.
Okay, Arthfell Forest.
Yes, and there are two major port cities. One of them is called Augustana.
Okay.
And straight north of the city is this forest, Arthfell Forest. And there's a bunch of fae, there are some humans, there are some druids, and the governor kind of looks around and goes, I bet that forest would be a great resource of lumber. Oh. And there's like some iron deposits and like other wonderful little resources.
Okay, so quick pause.
Yes.
What is it? What exactly is a fae? Can you explain that?
Fae is a creature from the plane of the Feywild. They are essentially like pixies and like woodland critters, all of like your magical children's books.
Yeah, kind of magic woodland creatures.
Yes.
Kind of.
Magical woodland creatures is a good umbrella term for them. So the governor, he looks north and he goes, well, we got to go exploring.
Of course.
So he sends an army up into this forest, and they are wildly successful. They like slaughter all the fae nearby, they push out all the druids, and very quickly Arthfell Forest goes from wonderful wild world of enchantment and woodland glory to future site of Andoran industry. Wonderful, right?
Love it. Taldor is going to Taldor.
Yes, Taldor doesn't know how to not explore. And at this point, the forest stretches all the way from the inner sea to the Five Kings Mountains, which we've not talked about at all, but it's an enormous forest.
Dang, okay. So that's basically half of Andoran.
It basically cuts Andoran in half. Okay. It's an enormous forest.
Okay, dang.
I'm just going to throw that in there because that's going to come back.
That's going to be irrelevant.
Yes. And so by 1750 AR, so only maybe 40 years.
Yeah.
Almost 100% of Taldor's naval power is being built in Augustana.
So we went from like very idyllic, kind of farmland and forest and everybody's happy. It becomes a province and 40 years later it's just industry.
The march of industry, Tyler. Industry stops for no one.
Can't stop the future.
You can't stop the progress of the future. Tyler, I just looked up. The lights flickered.
It's fine.
Industry's mad at us right now. The electricity's mad at us. So time goes on. There's not a ton written up to, I'm going to jump to 2080 AR.
Okay.
Almost
300 years? 400
years.
Cool.
400 years. The Sixth Army of Exploration, remember them?
Yeah.
They're the ones that didn't go so well.
Oh, that was the one that went down
to
Garund.
Yes.
Okay, so I went south.
So in preparation for that Army of Exploration, the Taldans, again, and Andoran is a Taldan province, they kind of go town to town and they volunteer hundreds of Andoran citizens to serve in the Army of Exploration. So enlist.
They had a draft.
Yes. They wanted a conscription is what it would be called.
Okay.
Yeah, so they conscript a whole bunch of people into the Army of Exploration. And then that army, like we just said, goes really poorly. And it's almost completely obliterated.
Okay, so then did just a bunch of Andorans just dies?
Yeah, they're just dead.
Okay, cool.
So where before, and this is a really important like stop point now, where before all the Andorans were really happy being provincial citizens of the Taldor Empire.
Yeah.
And then after this, they're like, yo, you just recruited a bunch of our people and they all died. We are maybe slightly less fans of Taldor.
Yeah, that wouldn't be great.
Yeah.
And that entire Army of Exploration was mostly an ego trip anyway. So no good use out of it.
Yes. Taldor was like, we want to conquer all of the entire known world. And it didn't go well. So not super great.
Yeah.
And you're going to start to see a little bit of like, not revolution yet, but people aren't so on board with the idea of being Taldan now. The initial ideas of, well, maybe we could be something a little different, or maybe we just shouldn't agree with Taldor on everything. So then jumping forward a little bit, 2715 AR.
Okay.
So it's another 700 years. And the whole time, the Andoran people, they're less jazzed about being Taldan, but they're not open rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Over in Eastern Andoran,
okay,
and this is just a goofy little side one, there's this ancient black pool of water that's discovered.
Cool.
You know, it's just underground black pool of water. So what would you do if you discovered a black pool of water, Tyler?
I would most likely, if it wasn't oil, which is not, which I'd milk that. If it was just a creepy pool of black water, I would definitely just brick over it and act like nothing happened and move away.
That's correct.
I would sell that property to some unsuspecting bystander so they have to deal with it.
You are exactly right. You would build a church over it. That is absolutely what you would do. And then as you establish that church, you'd really get into self-torture.
What? Just okay. So somebody was like, I want to worship this black pool and also torture myself because are we back in the mind control where
No mind control.
Okay.
No, this is just weird things happening in Andoran.
Cool. Perfect.
And one of the methodologies of self-torture is they tie themselves upside down over the pool, which is a weird self-torture choice. But anyway, very shortly thereafter, so that was 2715, 2724.
Quick aside, okay.
Quick aside, a huge horde of goblins sweep in from another forest, the Verduran forest, which is the one that's shared by Taldor. Huge goblin horde sweeps through. And they also discover this monastery now.
Yeah.
And they find a bunch of priests hanging upside down over this pool of black water. So they do the goblin thing and they cut down the priests and let them fall into the black pool of water.
Okay. I mean, Gobos know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're like, this seems stupid.
I mean, they run in and they're like, I think they need to come down.
Yeah.
And
do you guys need help? Let us get you down.
Yeah. So then what happens, of course, as predicted, there's this ancient creature that lives in the black pool called the Dreamer in the Depths, who proceeds to be awakened by the sacrifices of the upside down hanging priests. And the Dreamer in the Depths just goes rampaging all over the eastern part of Andoran.
Oh my gosh. I have both so many questions and just no questions. No, all questions, no comments. Okay. So what happens?
So it rampages around for half a year, 6 months.
Okay.
And eventually, remember, this is still Taldor.
Yeah.
So a Taldan regiment of soldiers shows up with a magical spear of some kind.
Cool.
And they're under orders to kill the Dreamer. And their solution, they figure out they can't kill him for some reason. So they just push the Dreamer back into the pool, but they also go into the pool with the Dreamer and none of them come out. Okay. Crisis averted.
So now I'm intrigued. I'm back on. I'm on team pool now. What's happening?
So if you were to go to this pool of water now, you could technically still go there. The monastery is totally collapsed, but the rumors are that you could jump into the pool and there's a different dimension, in the upside down water dimension.
I just imagine you have how it started, how it's going. How it started in a bunch of farmers just kind of doing their farmer thing and having a nice field, and where it's at, you just see a bunch of people go fighting a big demon back into a pool. It's what? How? Somebody explain to me.
Oh, and the best part about this, it has no bearing on the rest of the history. This is just a thing that happened that I found wildly entertaining in the history of Andoran.
Okay.
This never comes up again. This isn't a pivotal moment in their history. This is just oh yeah, by the way, Uncle Ted went missing.
And moving on. Okay. I love it.
So an actually relevant historical fact, perfect. 3980 AR.
Okay. So from the last relevant historical fact.
2,000 years.
2,000 years.
Pretty
okay.
much. So this whole time, Andoran generally feels well, maybe we could do better. There's still resentment from the loss of the 6th Exploration Army.
Yeah.
But they've not done anything about it. There's this thing called the Rending.
Ooh.
And I don't want to talk too much about the Rending because it's really a topic more for the Five King Mountains and other nations.
Yeah.
But the high level is a volcano in the Five Kings Mountains blows up. Oh. It erupts. And the Five Kings Mountains are directly north of Andoran. Okay. And as part of that eruption, just widespread devastation in the nearby area. And a lot of stuff flows down the rivers and has issues. The other major port city, which will be the capital, called Almas.
Okay.
Large scale flooding, all the debris and the water and the landslides, it all just completely runs down the river and devastates the current capital of Almas.
Ooh, not great.
So they're going to eventually rebuild.
Fair.
Which is fine. The other critical part about the Rending, though, for Andoran is there's this place called the Endless Gulf.
Like Gulf?
Yes.
Okay.
So what the Endless Gulf is, and we have not talked about the Darklands yet.
Ooh, okay.
So the Darklands.
There's a lot of teasers in this
I know.
episode.
The short version of the Darklands are there are these tunnels all over Golarion that connect all the different continents.
Yeah, it's the world under the world.
The world under the world. The Endless Gulf connects all 3 layers of the Darklands.
Oh, cool.
So you could literally walk over, look down the Endless Gulf, and see miles and miles and miles straight down.
And this is in Andoran?
Yeah, it's right on the border.
North?
Yeah, the northern border.
So correct. you have pool of Dream Demon on the
east.
On the east.
Yep.
Massive gulf on the north. Cool.
And then Cheliax to the west.
And Cheliax in the west. Perfect.
There's not a huge issue with this initially, but over the years, you're going to have essentially monster incursions come out of the Darklands and threaten parts of the northern parts of Andoran.
Yeah, that's
because
fair.
of the large gulf.
Okay.
So super interesting thing that happens. And then we start to have our final rumors of like breaking away and things start happening. So 4079.
Okay.
Pirates.
Pirates.
So an Andoran admiral, Jeniz Ratorian.
That's a cool name.
Which is also an awesome name. He writes a document. He's inspired by Galt.
Cool.
Called the Writs of Course. Okay. And the Writs of Course basically say, well, we don't really acknowledge Taldor's rule over the seas here. So we hereby give ourselves the permission to raid Taldan ships.
No one understands maritime law.
And what's going to happen now is the Taldan Navy, which again was 100% built out of Augustana.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
Is going to start having issues like supplying its own ships because the locals are like, well, I don't actually submit to your authority on the high seas, so I claim your ship as mine. And then they start attacking.
So the industry of building a boat, gets the logs, sends them down the river, builds the boat, ships it out into sea, and then they're like, maritime law, and somebody jumps on the boat and just runs away with it.
Kinda. Well, they even they see it as, well, it's Andoran wood, it's Andoran labor, it's a lot of Andoran crews still. We don't submit that we think Taldor controls these ships. Every other part of the ship is Andoran.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'm on board.
Yeah, so they kind of turn into their own little pirate coastal boards where Taldor has other things going on like we've discussed. So they just kind of let that happen.
There's so many things that Taldor is just like, another thing.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And then 2 years later, we've talked about it twice already, the Even-Tongued Conquest.
Yes. Our good friend of the pod, Aspects the Even-Tongued.
Aspects the Even-Tongued, friend of the pod. He goes to Andoran, just like he went to Galt, and goes, hey, I know you don't like Taldor either. Leave with us. And they do.
Cool.
They're good with it. And it goes generally well. Andoran flourishes under Chelish rule.
Okay.
They're good with it.
So even more so than Galt, where he's just kind of left alone for a while.
Yeah. Nice. It's not they're not left alone. It's they are active trading partners back and forth.
Oh, okay.
They're connected. They have easy shipping routes. It is a generally good time to be Chelish and to be Andoran.
Nice.
It's a good time.
Good times.
So while the good times are happening, I'll kind of cover a couple other things that are happening. There's this guy called Karis the Falcon Novotnan.
Dang, that's a cool name.
Very cool name. So he, of course, this is not Taldor anymore. This is technically all Cheliax.
Okay.
He is an Andoran ranger, is the best way I can describe him. And
so kind of a ranger's good with survival and bows and swords.
And he commands some authority.
Okay.
So he kind of leans back into his Taldan roots. And he decides to go exploring in the Dark Moon Vale.
Ooh, what is this?
Dark Moon Vale is the northern part around the volcano that it's now called the Dark Moon Vale because there's monsters, there's other bad things there. Okay,
so northern Andoran.
Yes, northern Andoran. He, again, he's technically an officer of the Empire of Cheliax, and the poor Kelids, the Kelids who got attacked by the Taldans before, he finds a different tribe of Kelids and he puts them down.
Come on.
I know. The Kelids get a bad rap. The more we read, the poor Kelids just keep being on the bad side of the stick.
They get knocked down. They get up again. They get knocked down again.
Yeah, and so the ultimate outcome of this, there's not really land. He doesn't do a great job of subjugating everything.
Okay.
But on his heraldic crest is a falcon.
Ooh.
Caw!
Yeah.
Falcon.
Like it.
This is the start of the Andoran, we're going to call it obsession with birds of prey.
I like it.
They are big fans of hawks and eagles and raptors.
Sounds familiar.
Yes. Everything that is bird with sharp talons that flies fast. This is where it starts. Karas the Falcon.
So before he was Karas Navantian, and then he became the Falcon after this?
He became the Falcon.
Dang. So
people, he did his whole thing and then in the Vale, and then everyone's just oh, I want to be like the Falcon one day. And it just like his local legend grows, and he becomes a folk hero for Andoran.
Okay.
At this roughly the same time, there's this thing called the Lumber Consortium.
Okay.
They are established in Orgent. Oregent. Origent. Central Andoran.
Okay.
So they look around because we had all the lumber from before.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, we could make a lot of money.
Oh no.
Doing lumber things. And they create this like large lumber corporation, and they vertically integrate lumber production all over parts of Cheliax and especially Andoran, which is great.
Let's talk about vertical integration and synergy in terms of a fantasy role-playing game.
Big fans of efficiencies in lumber.
Okay.
And they quickly acquire like all the mom and pop lumber shops is the best way I can describe it. They acquire all of them basically.
So basically the Walmart of lumber muscles its way into the Andoran lumber.
Yeah, they show up to every forest. They pay for every lumberjack to go on their payroll. They just become the name for lumber, which is critical because Andoran still builds a ton of ships. Like it's a hugely important resource in Andoran. The lumber trade is key.
Yeah.
So the Lumber Consortium doesn't become an active part of the government, but like they're like the people with lots of money, the merchant class on the side, like, hey, how would you like some lumber money? How would you like some lumber bucks?
Lumber bucks.
And they're going to slowly keep expanding.
Okay.
So things are great. Everything's going wonderful. So Tyler, remember our friend Aridin? Friend of the pod
Aridin.
Yeah. So in preparation for Aridin coming back, the Andoran government goes, wow, the Chelish people are talking, the Chelaxians are talking about, hey, they're like the chosen people.
Yeah.
But Andoran, like we want to have our own awesome people to meet Aridin.
Okay.
We want to have our own like welcoming committee. So they create the Eagle Knights.
Ooh.
And they are like a really small group of really powerful, really well-trained knights. And the idea is they're going to go over to Cheliax and be Aridin's personal bodyguards. Like, oh, we're going to be in there. Like, we're going to work together. Everything's going to go great.
Perfect.
Everything doesn't go great.
Nothing goes great.
Aridin dies, as we talked about before. Cheliax starts to have problems. Galt starts to have problems.
Yeah, things start to burn down.
Andoran starts to have problems.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of open question now with the Chelish Civil War happening.
Yeah.
What that means for Andoran. So they're looking west. They don't have answers. They look northeast and they see Galt. Hey, they're writing some good stuff.
They have some good poets and philosophers.
They got some good poets. They got some good philosophers. They're seeing all these the
on government and
yes.
Okay.
On government, yes. So he's looking
imperial betrayal.
On government and imperial betrayal. Yes. So they're reading all this stuff come out of Galt and they go, this is interesting. Maybe we could do our own thing about it. And the current king of Andoran, because the king responds to the Empire of Cheliax, is looking around and going, I don't feel good about the situation, but it's all okay until Queen Abigail comes in.
Yes.
And
House Thrune.
The devils start showing up, and there's rumors that the devils are going to invade Andoran and put everything to bed. So the king does exactly what you would think a king would do to protect his people. He tries to give in to every one of King Abigail's demands.
I will protect my people by kissing the feet of my please don't hurt us.
You know, I don't feel totally bad for him because the Galtan Revolution is occurring right now.
Yeah.
And so he looks to his northeast and goes, oh my gosh, if I don't step in and do something, Andoran is going to turn into another Galt. We're going to have blood in the streets. We're going to have riots. We're going to have...
I'm going to die.
They're going to cut my head off. Like everything's going to go really bad. Okay. So given the choice between having my head chopped off by a final blade or worshiping a devil, he and like the rest of the aristocrats choose the devil.
I see the logic. It's
not good logic.
It's not good logic. I see it.
It is logic, right?
I see it. There's no third option in this case, I guess. Right. So,
but there is a third option.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's
there is a third option. So the people, when they hear that their king is really cool with all the devil stuff, are like, no, that is not going to happen. And the people rise up. They've been inspired by all this stuff coming out of Galt. The difference is it is surprisingly bloodless.
Huh.
There's a contingent of nobles who didn't agree with the king's commands.
Oh, okay.
And so they kind of step in and they go, we agree this is bad. We're going to renounce our noble titles.
Ooh.
We're going to be common citizens like you. We're going to move forward together.
Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of, instead of a us versus them, it's all of us together versus that one guy.
Versus that one guy and like his like 4 or 5 people.
Yeah, fair.
Yes. And it's called the People's Revolt.
Okay.
So there's still a lot of disruption. Like the whole economy grinds to a halt. The lumber consortium has to shut down operations for a time. But in general, it goes okay. There is a little bit of blood.
Yeah.
There's a couple nobles who refuse to renounce their titles, and they are convinced at sword point to renounce their titles. But yeah, overall, a democratic republic is announced. And it's not a huge riot. Everyone kind of agrees that let's do this.
Yeah.
So then they have essentially a continental congress. And they get together and they're like, we're going to make a constitution.
What?
Yeah. And it's called the Associative Act.
Okay.
So that's the Constitution group is called the People's Freedom Movement, which could also be a revolutionary government. I mean, that's a questionable name.
That's fair.
The Associative Act. And this is their proxy or the equivalent of our Bill of Rights and Constitution.
So Andoran's kind of a good proxy for America.
Oh, Andoran is 100% America.
Okay.
100% America.
You know, you started to, you kind of buried the lead a little bit with the Eagles, obviously.
Yes.
And then, you know, talk about Eagles. Talking about America.
Eagle Knights, the Falcon.
Corporations.
They're loving it. Corporations. Yeah, the Associative Act. So it's the first democratic constitution in the Inner Sea area.
Okay.
It is explicitly written with safeguards for the rights of every Andoran citizen. They're going to protect all of our rights. So the central thing is that the Andoran citizens have the right to follow their conscience as long as they don't harm or intend to harm others. Which is like a very reasonable, you can do whatever you want in your house, but the moment you try to like burn down your neighbor's house, we're going to find that illegal.
Yeah.
It also protects freedom of religion.
Okay.
Even the devil worshippers, they don't agree with them. You're going to get mocked, but every religion is legal in Andoran. And they even like have their own little nascent constitutional law where this class of lawyers are like, well, what do they mean when they say in the Associative Act that we support all peoples? But there's like this flourishing, young, nascent democracy of all these different ideas that didn't go over the edge like Galt did.
Which is kind of interesting because obviously, you know, we're used to in our current world a bunch of different democracies, but you don't really think about it. When I think of like medieval, kind of medieval fantasy world, I don't think of like, so you go fill out, you know, you go to the government, you know, the democratically elected people. So that's kind of cool.
Right. Yeah. The Eagle Knights we talked about before. Obviously, Aridin didn't make it. Mm-hmm. So they kind of look around and they go, well, we're going to make the Eagle Knights like the defenders of democracy and freedom.
Team Andoran.
I'm going to start using the word freedom a lot.
Freedom a lot.
They're big believers in freedom. So the Eagle Knights become, at least to the people of Andoran, like the symbols of freedom.
Cool.
Which is awesome. And they have like giant eagle heads on their one shoulder.
They have like giant pauldrons of eagles.
Literally giant eagle pauldrons. Yes. Well, in response, Cheliax is not all about this.
Yeah.
But Cheliax has their own problems. As like a reoccurring theme, everyone has their own problems. So Cheliax, they can't invade. They don't really have an army that can deal with it. So they embargo Andoran.
Okay.
They like set up a blockade across the entire coastline. Taldor is already a mess. Galt is a mess.
Yeah.
The Five Kingdoms don't really do much with Andoran. So like their only major trading partner is shutting them down.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. It only takes 20 years. They eventually get to the point where they build up their own secret navy. They launch like a nighttime attack and they sink 3 Chelish ships, including the big flagship.
Nice.
And this functionally ends. It wasn't even really a war, but like after this point, Cheliax is going to kind of shrug their shoulders and go, well, what are you going to do? We can't stop them, so we might as well at least acknowledge them. We don't like them. We're not big fans, but they are their own thing. So Andoran is an independent nation that has successfully revolted from the mother country.
Nice. And is
twice.
kind of twice.
So what do you do with your fledgling democracy, Tyler? You're like, man, we finally won after 20 years of revolutionary conflict. We've renounced all of our noble titles. What's the next step?
The next step, if it's, if you're the only democracy in an area, obviously it's like somebody who just found philosophy as like a college freshman and needs to tell everybody how smart they are. So I imagine you just go around and be like, hey guys, have you heard the good word of democracy?
100%. And now Andoran sees it's God-given mission to spread freedom and democracy in the inner sea.
They hear the word divine right and they're like, divine right to tell you about democracy.
To tell you about the good word of freedom.
Yes.
And the first test of this is going to be 4697 AR.
Okay.
So another neighboring smaller nation, Isker. There's this thing called the Goblin Blood Wars. We'll talk about that when we talk about Isker.
We have we're going to make a list of things that have been teased in this episode. It's fine.
Basically, lots of hobgoblins and goblins are fighting and like pillaging and murdering, and it's a whole problem that all the neighboring nations agree. If the hobgoblins and the goblins win, that could be bad and destabilize economy and like money.
Fair.
Everyone's big fans of money in this story.
Big fans of money, not big fans of goblins messing up with that money.
So what you're going to see, and this is just a fun little fact, this is the only recorded instance of Eagle Knights fighting with Hell Knights on the same team.
Ooh. So,
and Hell Knights are like the Eagle Knight equivalents in Cheliax.
Yeah, so instead of like, I imagine if Eagle Knights are like the freedom deliverers of Andoran, Hell Knights are like the order makers and kind of order keepers of Cheliax.
Yeah, so both Andoran and Cheliax both agree. Like, we don't like each other. We're diametrically opposed, but we can't let the goblins get out of control. So they both send contingents and they help put down that goblin rebellion, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So things keep progressing. A couple more years down the road, Andoran still wants to preach the good word of freedom. The next big one is 4705. There's a group called the Grey Corsairs.
Okay.
So remember before we talked about, we had the writs that said, well, we don't acknowledge the Tal'Doran navies.
Yeah.
They've now kind of morphed into this quasi-legal group of Andoran extremist freedom fighters.
Okay.
Who go after slave ships.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So they're like not totally acknowledged by the government, but they get government funds, and their whole mandate is to go mess up slavers.
I'm on board. I like the Grey Corsairs.
So the Grey Corsairs find 3 large Katapeshi, which is a different nation.
Yeah.
Huge galleons of slave ships. And without any formal declaration of war, any diplomatic relationships, they just board the galleons, kill all the Katapesh like sailors, and they free all the slaves.
Perfect. Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And they like release the slaves as like, you're all free, go do good stuff.
Yeah.
And that pretty much brings us to modern times in terms of large events. So now current day, Andoran is this kind of like we talked, they want to spread freedom and democracy throughout the world.
Okay.
They have the People's Council, which is like roughly equivalent to our Senate.
Yeah.
So 350 representatives, they're all elected by popular vote.
They're all alive.
They're all alive.
Unlike the last Senate.
Yeah, it's not 350 down to 100, it's 350. They serve 5-year terms.
Okay.
They represent their local districts, but they're not governors. So they're basically senators. And they come in for 2 to 4 weeks a year to the Capitol. They do their thing, and then they go back to their home districts and like implement policies and help organize the government and all kinds of stuff. And they elect a public spokesperson called the People's Voice, which is kind of like our Speaker of the House or like head of the Senate. And that person is the generally acknowledged like leader of the Assembly. The People's Council is also responsible for electing the Supreme Elect.
Okay.
And that's roughly the equivalent of like our president.
Okay.
So the president's not directly elected. It's elected by the senators.
Yeah.
And they also serve a 5-year term.
Okay.
The previous one served 3 terms and then voluntarily stepped down.
George Washington did.
He basically George Washingtoned it. The current one, she's on a couple years into her term. She's doing a good job. Her name is Andrea Marutsk.
Okay. She
used to be in charge of the military. She stepped in. She's doing a good job right now. And they do some pretty good stuff in the government. It's a generally well-implemented, decently efficient, and moderately responsive government.
Huh. Okay. This is like just a complete 180 from last week.
Everything's working. There is always talk in the Andoran government where they don't want to be Galt.
Yeah.
So that's a constant concern of like when they're implementing policies, they look around and go, well, if we do this, will we like embrace the mob?
Yeah.
And like that's always in the back of their mind.
I guess if you have a good example of like what not to do, you're like, okay, we know where things go if you mess up.
Right.
So
right.
That's fair.
Part of that response is they have a much stronger military.
Yeah.
So we talked about the Eagle Knights.
Okay.
The Eagle Knights grow to become this large umbrella term for military of Andoran.
Okay.
And we have some different sub-factions. We have the Golden Legion, which is like your regular military.
Yeah.
They run around, they have spears and shields, and they fight the battles in the field.
Cool.
The Steel Falcons, they're the Foreign Legion, like the diplomats.
Yeah.
They are, everyone hates the Steel Falcons.
Okay.
Who is not Andoran. It'd be basically if we sent a diplomat out who shows up and like, sit down, shake hands. Hi, I know you have concerns, but have you heard the good word of democracy?
Just before we start.
Sir, I know you have your internal problems.
Sir, I just asked for some wine.
Yeah. So pretty much every other foreign nation hates when a Steel Falcon shows up because they're like, oh my gosh, we've heard this pitch a million times. We don't want to be a democracy with you.
Stop it.
Yeah. We have the Twilight Talons, who are the CIA.
I love a good alliteration, so I'm in for it.
Oh, yeah. Again, everything is bird of prey.
Yeah.
The Twilight Talons are completely unacknowledged.
Okay.
They are the CIA. They don't have an official head or an official funding or anything. Everyone who is a Twilight Talon is separately appointed to a different part of the government to give them some legitimacy.
Okay.
But then they can like turn around and do like Black Ops, Gray Ops stuff.
Do they just recruit from within?
Oh, no. They're the ones who are implementing our issues of democracy.
Yeah. But like, how do you get more if it's not acknowledged?
Oh, it's not written explicitly in the source material, but it sounds like you need to be like personally recruited by an individual in the Twilight Talons to join the Twilight Talons.
That makes sense.
And there's like 5 to 10 years of training to be a Twilight Talon.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's a whole thing. So yeah, they're like sneaking around, doing questionable things in other nations, overthrowing governments to make other democracies if they're attempting it. So again, not even fully acknowledged, but they do exist in the lore. And then of course our Grey Corsairs. They are both the Navy, and they are just the most blatant and explicit in going after slaves. So if a Grey Corsair ship shows up, they're going to immediately go find the mayor. Do you have any slaves? If so, they are now free, and we're willing to implement that by force.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Doing good work. Yeah. I like it.
They are definitely not the most lawful people in the world.
Yeah. So, you kind of got to be a little bit chaotic to go in and just wreck current government, which is fair. If the systems of government suck, go for it.
Yeah. So they're big enslavers, and then they love going out to the Shackles and fighting pirates.
The Shackles being the pirate haven we talked about.
Yes.
In the first episode.
Which is really not close to Andoran at all.
At all. They make the ship. They make the trip down there.
They make the trip down there just to mess with pirates.
Okay. So the original pirates that happened, years ago.
Yes.
Those didn't become the Grey Corsairs.
They did.
Okay.
They became the Grey Corsairs fighting for Andoran.
Okay, so they used to be pirates and now they're instead we like Andoran and now hate other pirates.
Correct.
Okay.
Because they see those other pirates as supporting slavery.
Okay, fair.
That's slavery is like their hard line.
Fair.
If you support slavery, you do not have a Grey Corsair as your friend.
Fair.
And then on the economic side, things are going well. The country is prosperous. We have the lumber consortium in the background. It's surprisingly less powerful. Mm-hmm. Democracy kind of injured their plans to subjugate workers and make them work infinite hours. And they're actually doing okay with holding the lumber consortium into control. There's the primordial ones are still issues. So those are all the druids of the forest.
Yeah, the ones that got booted out 4,000 years ago.
Remember the Verduran forest?
Yeah.
So before it was this giant long forest that was sea to mountains, it's almost half the size now. So the druids are more and more mad. So there are issues.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like Andoran is this perfect, idyllic utopia, but things are good. Andoran's out there exporting freedom. They're fighting slavery.
Right. Exports are eagles and freedom.
And not everyone agrees with the export of freedom, but in general, Andoran is a pretty decent place. It's in a good spot.
Just hanging
It's
out.
doing good.
Okay.
They have good times ahead of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, pretty low key. I like it.
They're doing good.
Just chilling.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ryan. That's a good overview of our freedom equivalent to America, Andoran. And we'll take a quick break and then come back with a campaign.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back, everybody.
Hello, welcome back.
Now is the section where I'm going to talk about a campaign, and then Ryan's going to try to fit a character.
We're going to try.
Into it. And I think this one might be a hard one for you.
Okay, we're going to try.
I'm throwing you a curveball. It sounds like Andoran is a pretty solid place to be.
Yes.
So I decided this would be a fun place to have an evil campaign.
Ooh, an evil campaign in Andoran.
So one of the problems that we have had in the past with evil campaigns is we don't make it very far because mostly everybody just kills each other. I am still salty about you and Charles killing my character after 5 sessions.
To be fair, that was not 100% my idea.
That's true. It was Charles, and then he anyway. So we realized after that evil campaign that to actually run a good evil campaign, everyone would have to kind of have the same goal.
Yes.
So that way you're
pointed in the same direction.
You're all together being evil.
Yes.
So I have 2 inspirations for this. Like all my campaigns, I always find inspiration in other
other forms of media. Yep.
So part of it is kind of a cop-out. Part of my inspiration is a campaign you and I ran like a year or 2 ago, where basically we talked about Hell Knights, where all the players thought they were joining a Hell Knight Academy, and turns out they were just being used to be like sacrificed in a fake Hell Knight Academy by a guy who was too crazy to be a Hell Knight.
Yes.
That kind of worked because it took the players several sessions to realize, there's something weird about this place.
Yeah, they had to figure it out.
Instead of doing a kind of, the PCs don't know what's going on, instead, it would be cool for this campaign to be set as everyone's Eagle Knights. Okay. But everyone is like a splinter group of Eagle Knights that are crazy.
Radical Eagle Knights.
Where like freedom is not being done enough. People tell, like the Steel Falcons, you said everybody kind of hates them.
Yeah.
Maybe they're like kind of Steel Falcon times 10.
Okay, yeah.
Instead of going out and just telling people like, hey, have you heard about democracy? They're like, we love democracy. Whether we, we will kill you to get democracy happen.
I'm about to democracy all over you.
Yeah. All the players are very aware of they're crazy.
Yes.
But they think they're normal.
Okay, yeah.
So they think they are the good guys. Which brings me to kind of my second inspiration with Peacemaker. From the Suicide Squad.
Oh, okay.
So have you seen the recent movie?
I have not.
Okay,
no.
So basically there's a guy who loves peace. So, he has a quote that he's like, I love peace with all my heart, and it doesn't matter how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get there.
Of course.
So
peace by any price.
Peace by any price. He's obviously a villain, but he's like, I'm a good guy.
Yeah, he's 100%, he thinks he's a good guy.
So I imagine all the players are like that.
Okay, yeah,
Where you are going around... You are set based in Andoran. Everyone's probably Steel Falcons.
Yeah.
And they're like, your mission is to go out and take out this oppressive king or whatever in this area.
Yes.
And you go kill him, and it turns out he was actually pretty benevolent. He just happened to run a kingdom and not a democracy. And so because when I think of a lot of evil campaigns, I feel like people will tend to just kind of be evil for evil's sake. Like, I'm going to go burn down an orphanage. And it's like, why? Well, I don't know. I'm evil. I'm going to go do it.
Yes, the typical chaotic evil stupid.
Yeah, the chaotic stupid. So I like the idea of everybody thinks they are doing the right thing.
Oh, I love this.
And they're like, we are the good guys. We're out. We're getting missions, and we're going to free these people from oppression. And then you just kind of make it worse in some form. I don't exactly know the mechanic of how you would see the kind of view from the Eagle Knights perspectives of here's how we're helping people. And then from the players' perspectives, you look back and in that town immediately went bankrupt because you killed their leader.
Yeah, you definitely would have some kind of meta, everything was awful.
Yeah, my campaign is basically everyone's evil. They all think they're the good guys. They're doing normal adventuring type things.
Yeah.
But it's all flipped because your adventuring is going to murder people who probably shouldn't have been murdered. And just you don't care how you get there. You're we are here for democracy. I will kill anybody to get that democracy. If there's nobody there, I can make democracy happen.
I immediately think of there's this king. He's building, or it's a wizard, even better. We need you to infiltrate this wizard's tower. This wizard is creating a weapon of mass destruction. You need to stop them and obtain that weapon so we can use it for freedom.
Yeah.
And then you get there and it's what?
Yeah. You get it and you're mission successful.
I think this runs perfectly if you almost treat them like a terrorist cell.
Yeah.
There's no handler. Before every mission, you poll the group and it's okay, what are we voting to do today?
Ooh, okay, yeah.
It's okay, well, what are our critical objectives right now? Well, there's not enough freedom in Isker. We need to go do something in Isker. All in favor? Aye. Okay, let's go bring freedom to Isker.
Yeah, so you go in, you murder a couple of leaders, you install somebody random and say, you're a democracy now.
I love this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm such a fan.
Okay. With that, how are you going to fit your character who may not be evil into my evil campaign, which I've thrown you
my character's chaotic neutral.
Which is basically the evil of neutral.
It is the evil of neutral.
It's if you want to be evil without being evil, be chaotic neutral.
This could work. The character is Jolie Nightglade.
Okay.
And I envisioned her as a female halfling who was working for the Lumber Consortium for a number of years.
Fair.
Happily toiling away at her job. And she had a chance encounter with the Fae, or the Druids of the forest. and she watched as the lumber consortium, like it could have been a very minor dispute. And the lumber consortium shows up with like a large contingent of soldiers and just like wipes that druidic village off the map. And she makes a decision to like, well, I think this is wrong. I want to right the wrongs. Like I've been cutting down trees for the last 20 years. I want to do better than that. And I want to help the forest and like make nature come back. So how do I integrate her? I think there's room where she joins up with this cell under like the false pretense of like, yes, I want to take down the consortium. And she sees like, I want to bring freedom to the druids and I want to bring freedom the right way. And I almost see her as like the slow descent type of character.
Yeah.
Where she starts out not evil, but she's well-intentioned. I want to help and bring the trees back. But then she kills a government official and like, oh my gosh, I've done a terrible thing. Yeah. And then just like continues to fall down the path of evil.
I also think it'd be funny if your character just like, what are we voting on today? And everyone's like, okay, well, we need to go kill this mayor. And Jolie's like, we need to plant 5 trees.
Measure smart goals, everyone. Smart goals. We need to do reasonable things, actionable items right now.
So like every time you go on a mission, she's just like, I've planted 5 trees. I am so...
Yeah, that could work. She just sees the group as like her conduit for her own agenda. She's like, well, I mean, if we destabilize a couple foreign governments,
that's fine.
It's no problem of mine, but the trees.
The trees,
as long as we're bringing the trees back. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
I think it could be both, because I feel like you kind of... Obviously, you have to be somewhat evil to be okay with gross amounts. You're either oblivious or kind of evil.
Yes.
And I think it'd be kind of not as fun to play her oblivious.
Yes.
I think it'd be cool to play her as a... She's the kind of green watch, like safety watchman of the group. Like, hey guys, remember, don't litter.
Yes.
Kill that guy, but also make sure you clean up.
Yes. Yes. Like, okay, I know we're all really excited because everyone have their life vests on. Like, before we ford the river to murder all these people, make sure you have your flotation devices attached.
Yes. Everybody have their pack of seeds. You're going to plant some trees after this. That's like their after party ritual. It's like...
Every single mission ends with like, oh, and we also plant like 5 trees. This probably works better if you integrate her backstory a little more with one of the other existing characters. So that like, oh, well, I've been friends with our barbarian friend for years. He's not such a bad person. And then like camera pan, they're like beheading someone in the background.
Hey Joe, you want some popcorn?
Yeah. Well, that's just my sister Jolie. She's great. I'm going to bring her along.
Yeah. Okay, she's just a family member. It's like, we're going on a trip.
We're going on an adventure.
I brought seeds.
Oh my God, it's like the intro to The Hobbit. He's like running down with the, I'm going on an adventure. And then
just a bunch of chaotic people.
A bunch of murderers.
I like that. You got to have like kind of like a lighthearted person and a bunch of murder hobos.
Yeah.
So I think that,
good perspective for murder hobos.
Yeah. It kind of keeps them grounded.
Yeah. Keep everybody on the right page.
I love it.
This is good. I think this works. This works.
Okay, Ryan. So we've talked about Andoran. We've talked about some campaigns.
Yep.
So on a scale of 1 to 5 caws?
1 to 5 caws!
1 to 5 caws.
We gotta go back to the birds of prey.
Birds of prey. Okay, how many caws do you think it would be to vacation in Andoran?
Well, as the person who did all the history and research, 5 out of 5 cacaws.
5 out of 5 cacaws.
Absolutely. You're going to go hang out in a port city. You don't have to worry about getting like murdered by an angry mob. There aren't like destitute nobles like looking to backstab you. I am 100% good to go vacation here.
Yeah, and I imagine, they're about kind of corporations, so there's a tourism industry.
100%.
Yeah. I would say this is probably the most normal place to vacation on all of Golarion from Earth people. Like, oh, Andoran? Okay, that checks out.
I would definitely be interested in going and taking pictures with like an Eagle Knight. I think this could be a really actually fun place. So 5 out of 5 cacaws.
5 out of 5 cacaws. Perfect. You heard it here first. Tabletop Travel Guide review of Andoran. 5 out of 5.
Our seal of approval.
Our talon of approval.
Talon of approval. Yes, talon of approval.
Talon of approval. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you again, Ryan. This has been a great discussion about freedom and eagles and murder and
oh yeah.
So until next time, everybody, happy travels.
Safe travels.